To arrive at a better understanding of what critical thinking is, it's necessary to come to a better understanding of what language and words are, and how language and words are used to support thinking, are used to express it, are used as tools to arrange it and sort through our thoughts. That is the purpose of language. So for a long time, it seemed to me in my youth that my thoughts were made of words, that I just had words floating around my mind, that the words were the content of my thoughts, and the education systems didn't do a great job of telling me otherwise. In fact, it seemed like that was part of the emphasis, or rather, it seems like perhaps the teachers didn't fully understand that what the actual function of language and words are when it comes to thinking. So, the function of words and language can be summarized in a simple statement that the message is the thought, not the words. This comes from, I believe, Claude Shannon's mathematical theory of communication, wherein I'm not going to travel down that tangent rabbit hole path yet, but I want to bring it to more simplified terms, because Mr. Shannon's report on mathematical theory for communication is at a higher level than what I want to communicate this at. And in fact, that's part of my goal, is to take a lot of the high-level research I've done into logic and reasoning and communication and the language arts and thinking and mental science, and bring it down to a more basic level, bring it down to a level that is capable of being understood at the secondary level of education. My reason for doing that is twofold, or at least two. There's more reasons, I'm sure. But I have children. I have, at the time of recording this video, I have an 11-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I am wanting to sort through this idea of critical thinking, critical thinking and mental science, so that I can teach my children, give them a better understanding of critical thinking and mental science than I did at that age. I feel like, if you recall back to your own, if you've participated in the government schools, we frequently skip the critical thinking questions in the book. Anytime we've anyways, that's another tangent. Back to theory of communication and how words function to support thinking. So it's not words that you have in your mind. Yes, you have words, and you have words that express themselves inside your thoughts in your mind, but your thoughts aren't made of words. To state it simply, your thoughts are meaning. Your thoughts are constituted of meaning, and words are the tools that you use to help structure that meaning. Words, language, technical definition of language is a system of symbols used for the communication of thought, emotion, and volition. So language is a system of symbols for communication. And when you do learn that in the education systems, that language is a system for communication, but it's not emphasized what is being communicated that we talk about communication and we talk about the power of communication. We need to develop communication skills. And the communication skills are important, but what are we communicating? We're communicating thoughts. That is what we're working with here. That's the primary substance. And it's important to understand what the true nature of thoughts are, and thereby what the true nature of words are. So a word, technical definition of a word is that it's a symbol. It functions as a symbol. That seems obvious, right? A word is obviously a symbol. But I think what gets lost is that what is the word a symbol for? It seems in the education systems that words are assigned to things, but that is not correct. That is technically not correct in terms of how our mental system functions. A word does not represent a thing. A word represents a concept. It represents a thought. And the thought represents the thing. This is the most important thing. Whenever I realized that, and the simplicity of it, everything else began to clarify. All other aspects of thinking began to clarify. But when you realize that it's not thoughts, it's not words in your mind, that the words are just there to bring your thoughts to a more conscious level and to help you work with your thoughts, then you've arrived at, I guess, the base level of critical thinking here. Is okay, because what that does for you is that you realize, wow, I'm not working with words, I'm working with thoughts. And thoughts are something different, and the words are just the tools that I use to work with the thoughts. The meaning of words. So the idea here is that a word is just a symbol. Consider the word tree. The word tree is a symbol for a thought. If I communicated the word tree to you and if you are not an English speaker, you do not understand English, and I approached you, let's say we met in the jungle somewhere. I approached you and I began communicating, and I share with you the word tree, but you didn't speak English. The word tree would just be an utterance. It would be a sound. There would be nothing attached to it. In order to attach something to it, you do that in your mind. We attach a thought, a specific type of thought. A specific type of thought, a concept. The concept of a tree. The concept of a tree is a perennial plant with a woody stem, root mass that protrudes from the ground, with branches and leaves, often foliage. We have this specific concept of what a tree is in our minds. And the structure of that concept is what's communicated whenever you hear the word tree. Now there's nuances to this, and it requires a deeper dive into the structure of concepts to come to a greater understanding, and I plan to do that, but it's going to take time. And in fact, perhaps a different medium. This medium, at this point, the main idea that I want to communicate is that words and the meaning of words, when we talk about the meaning of words, we're talking about not the thing that it's attached to, not the thing that is being pointed to, not the thing outside of yourself. The meaning of words is referring to that meaning that you have constructed inside your mind with your thoughts. The meaning is specific to the individual using the word. Even though I'm using the word tree, you likely have a different concept, albeit very similar, than I do. You have different experiences. You have experienced different individual trees than I have. So if I ask you to think of a tree, and now think of a specific individual tree that you've encountered, that you know of currently, that you are aware of and you could go look at right now. You could go observe and experience it. That tree that you are thinking of is different than the tree that I'm thinking of. I have multiple trees around me here, as you can see. I'm blessed to have this piece of land that is surrounded by trees. And I actually planted some fruit trees last year. And so I have a peach tree. I have a pear tree. Now those words represent different, albeit connected concepts to the main concept of tree. Here's my peach tree. Meaning of words. It's important to understand that the message when we're communicating is the thought, not the words. So when we're studying thinking, to understand that what we're studying is something different than words, and words are simply the tools that we use to aid us in understanding, to aid us in communicating them. Words are super important. Absolutely. Growing up in the government school system, it seemed to me, I talked a little bit in a previous video about my background. I want to dive deeper into my background here because I came through the education system and I was always what you would consider a good student. I was able to process the information that was provided to me and understand what was being asked of me to do with that information. It just came naturally. Dare I say I had the knack. For those other engineers who might be in the crowd, you understand what the knack might be. The knack is the ability to process information. I guess there's different variations of what you might consider a knack to be, but I had a knack for processing, and I still do, processing information and extracting out the meaning, the intended meaning of the information, and then also being able to play the game that was being asked of me. Okay, what do we do with this information? I was able to do it. I was successful. I graduated high school 7th in my class. Of course, it was a very small class. Shout out to my classmates, albeit nonetheless, whatever those words mean. What am I getting at? Math. I grew up liking math and science, mathematics in particular, significantly more than I appreciated studying the subject of English. And that's because the way language arts is presented in government school systems is completely, they strip the meaning out of it. It almost seemed to me like, wow, the true language of reality is math. And you hear that from scientists, and you hear that from mathematicians, and even engineers. And it's a common thread and belief out there that mathematics is the one true language, but I have to, after doing the research I've done into thinking here and coming to now almost 15 years in professional experience in working and applying mathematics and applying science towards an engineering practice, language is far more important than mathematics. In fact, you can't even begin to understand math without language. It's dependent on it. It's completely dependent on language. We can't even begin to communicate a mathematical theory unless we have a language to do so. There's an argument to be made that you could think and come up with a theory, but you would have no way to prove it. You would have no way to share it if we didn't have the language to do so. So the idea that math is the true, is more important than language is, I think it's faulty, and I think it's too bad that language doesn't take its rightful place, or it's not, the language arts aren't communicated perhaps in a more technical manner, like the mechanics of language and how it relates to thinking. Well, that's my intention. That's what I'm trying to do here. That's what I am doing with my channels of communication. I'm revisiting the language arts. I've done a deep dive on how language arts have been taught traditionally and historically through time, since back to the ancient Greeks, and the language arts were always taught before mathematics. You had to master language, and when you master language, you master thinking. That's the main idea. That's the idea. So there's an ancient adage, or an adage is a fancy word for quote or maxim, axiom to live by. It says that in the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Taking that, separating that from a spiritual context, a religious context or a spiritual context, to a more, just observing that from a technical standpoint, what does that mean? I think there is, because there's various levels of meaning that we deal with as well, and that's when we talk about levels of meaning, we're talking about levels of thinking, right? There's different structures of concepts that can be communicated by the same group of words. So when I say in the beginning was the Word, someone from a religious standpoint, a Christian, from a Christian standpoint, they arrive at a different meaning in their minds than what I am at this just basic level of what does that mean from a technical standpoint of understanding that a word is a symbol. So in the beginning was a symbol. A word is a symbol, and in the beginning was the symbol. So I think this is communicating something about how we should approach reality, the reality that we find ourselves participating in. It begins with words. It begins with the symbols that we use, and the symbols are representative of our thoughts. Remember that. That's the key point to take away from this recording here. So if we are to begin our procession through life and our navigation into this reality, and we begin with words, in the beginning was the Word, it states what I just communicated, that words and language take priority. It's absolutely necessary to understand the rightful place of language and the rightful place of words in the context of the broader science of the reality that we find ourselves in. We have to understand words and meaning. Recognize that words are symbols of meaning, and meaning resides in our minds. The next step then is to, okay, if meaning exists in our minds, how does it exist logically in our minds? How can we develop structures of meaning that aid us in the navigation of reality? And to this, I'll leave it with the structures of meaning that we create in our minds must be truthful. We must have true thoughts, and our thoughts must be truthful. And that's where I'm going to go in the next video. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe, and I think you'll get notified whenever I publish that video. If my communication interests you, please share with your friends. Ask some questions, leave some comments below. I would love to hear what others think of this, because that's part of this phase of my activity is to, I need feedback. I've gathered that there's another adage or axiom. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Adage, A-D-A-G-E. You say adage? Adage? There's another axiom that says, if you want to truly understand something, then you should teach it. So that's what I'm attempting to do. I want to understand thinking better. I want to understand the proper orientation of language in regards to thinking. I want to understand my mind, this mental science. So I am attempting to teach this so that I can understand it better, so that, well, I guess that would make my life easier. And then I can also leave a more appropriate trail for my children to follow. And the children of others, I suppose. Have a great day.